Welcome back to the Royal Griot, the home of African storytelling where emotions run deep and family comes first. To all our loyal queens in the US, Jamaica, and across the globe, thank you. Your support is the heartbeat of this channel. If you are new here, you are welcome home. Before we dive into today's tale of power, betrayal, and unexpected love, do me a small favor. Scroll down and drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. Are you in Atlanta? Kingston? New York? Let us know so we can welcome you properly. Now sit back. Today's story takes us to the vibrant streets of Nairobi, where a cold-hearted millionaire is about to meet his match. I slammed my fist onto the polished mahogany desk so hard the crystal water pitcher rattled. The sound echoed through the silent, air-conditioned boardroom on the 45th floor of the Trade Towers in Upper Hill, Nairobi. "You have to be out of your mind, Mzee Jomo," I growled, my voice low and dangerous. "I am Jabali Mwangi. I built this empire with my own two hands. I took my father's small logistics firm and turned it into a continental fortune. I do not take orders from dead people." Opposite me, Mzee Jomo, my late grandmother's lawyer and oldest confidant, didn't even blink. He adjusted his wire-rimmed spectacles and smoothed out the document in front of him. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Nairobi skyline shimmered under the midday sun, a sprawling concrete jungle that I owned a significant piece of. But inside the air was cold. "It is not an order, Jabali," Mzee Jomo said calmly, his voice raspy with age. "It is a condition. A stipulation in the trust. Your grandmother, bless her soul, was a wise woman. She knew you would conquer the world, but she also knew you would lose your soul doing it." I paced the room, my Italian leather shoes clicking sharply on the marble floor. "My soul is fine. My bank account is overflowing. I have a private jet on standby at Wilson Airport and a limousine waiting downstairs. I don't need a morality lesson. I need you to sign over the deed to the Mwangi Holdings Trust." "I cannot do that," Jomo said, tapping the paper. "Not until you fulfill the clause. Clause 4A, my grandson Jabali must act as a husband and father to a woman of worth, not wealth. He must marry Nia Odhiambo and care for her child for a period of no less than 1 year. Only then will full control of the assets be transferred." I stopped dead in my tracks. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Nia Odhiambo? Who is that? Some secret business partner's daughter? A socialite?" "She is a single mom," Jomo said, pulling a photograph from a manila folder and sliding it across the table. "She sells fabrics at the Maasai market. She is struggling to make ends meet." I looked at the photo. The woman was young, with dark skin that glowed even in the grainy picture. She wore a simple Ankara head wrap and her eyes looked tired. Defiant but tired. "This is a joke," I sneered, tossing the photo back. "You want me, Nairobi's most eligible bachelor, the man who graces the cover of Forbes Africa, to marry a market woman? A woman with another man's baggage? If you do not marry her by Friday," Jomo said, closing the folder with a definitive snap, "the entire fortune, the mansion in Karen, the fleet of cars, the logistics empire, will be liquidated and donated to charity. You will be left with nothing but your arrogance." My blood ran cold. Friday was 2 days away. "Why her?" I demanded. "Why this specific woman?" "That," Jomo said, standing up to leave, "is a question for your late grandmother. But knowing Mama Sisi, she saw something in Nia that you are blind to. You have 48 hours, Jabali. Fix this or lose it all." The drive from Upper Hill to the Eastlands was a journey between two different worlds. I sat in the back of my black Mercedes limousine, the tinted windows separating me from the dust and chaos of the city. I was fuming. My fists were clenched so tight my knuckles were white. "Driver," I barked into the intercom. "How much longer?" "Traffic is heavy on Jigu Road, sir," the driver replied nervously. "We are entering the estate now." I looked out the window. We were far from the manicured lawns of my estate. Here, corrugated iron sheets rusted under the sun. Matatus, the loud, colorful minibuses, honked aggressively, weaving through potholes. People were everywhere. Selling maize, walking, shouting, living. It was vibrant, yes, but to a man used to the sterile silence of a boardroom, it felt suffocating. I was cold-hearted. I knew that. I wore the label like armor. Emotions were for poor people. Focus and ruthlessness were for kings. And I was a king being forced to kneel. "Stop here," I ordered as the GPS indicated we had arrived. The car pulled up beside a row of stalls draped in colorful kitenge fabrics. The contrast was stark. My sleek million-dollar machine sitting amidst the dust and struggle. I stepped out, adjusting my suit jacket. The heat hit me instantly, carrying the scent of roasted corn and diesel fumes. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. A man like me in a suit that cost more than this entire block didn't just walk into this neighborhood. I scanned the stalls until I saw her. Nia. She was real, not just a photo. She was measuring a length of blue fabric for a customer, laughing at something the woman said. Her laughter was loud, uninhibited. She had a baby strapped to her back with a lasso, a little boy who looked about 3 years old, fast asleep despite the noise. She looked ordinary. I walked over, my security detail trailing a few steps behind. When I reached her stall, I didn't wait for her to finish with the customer. Nia Odhiambo? I asked, my voice cutting through the ambient noise. She froze. The customer took her fabric and hurried away, sensing the tension. Nia turned to face me. Up close, I saw the sweat on her brow, the fraying hem of her dress. But I also saw a fire in her eyes that the photograph hadn't captured. Who is asking? She said, her chin lifting. She didn't cower. Most people cowered. I am Jabali Mwangi, I said, expecting recognition. She frowned. Good for you. Do you want to buy fabric? If not, you are blocking my customers. The audacity. I am not here for fabric, I spat, stepping closer, looming over her. I am here to offer you a deal. A business arrangement. She adjusted the baby on her back, her hand protective over the child's small leg. I don't do business with men who wear sunglasses in the shade. It hides their eyes. Shows they can't be trusted. I took off my sunglasses, glaring at her. Listen to me, woman. I don't have time for games. I'm going to make you a millionaire. In exchange, you will sign a paper, wear a ring, and live in my house. You will pretend to be my wife. The market went silent around us. Even the matatas seemed to quiet down. Nia stared at me for a long moment. Then she laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was dry and mocking. You think because you drive a big car and smell like expensive cologne, you can buy people? She asked, stepping out from behind her stall. She was shorter than me, but she felt tall. I may be struggling, Mr. Mwangi. I may be a single mom fighting to feed my son. But I am not for sale. Everyone is for sale, I countered, reaching into my jacket pocket and pulling out a checkbook. I scribbled a number, an obscene amount, and ripped it out. This will pay your rent for 10 years. It will send that boy on your back to the best schools. All you have to do is say yes. I held the check out to her. Nia looked at the paper. For a second, I saw hesitation. I saw the mother in her calculating what that money could do. I smirked. I knew it. But then she looked up at me. Her eyes were blazing. You think money fixes everything, she whispered. You think because you have a fortune, you are a man. But a real man knows that dignity cannot be bought. She took the check from my hand and tore it in half. She let the pieces flutter to the dusty ground between our feet. Get out of my stall, she said, her voice shaking with rage. And take your shadow with you. I stood there stunned. Nobody said no to Jabali Mwangi. Nobody tore up 1,000,000 shillings. You are making a mistake, I warned, my voice dropping to a growl. You have no idea who you are dealing with. I can destroy this little business of yours with a phone call. And I, she said, stepping so close I could smell the soap on her skin, can scream right now and have this entire market descend on you before your security can blink. This is not your boardroom Bwana moneybags. This is my home. Leave. I clenched my jaw. I looked around. She was right. The other vendors, men with scarred arms and women with heavy baskets, were closing in, watching, waiting for a signal. I turned on my heel and marched back to the car. As I slid into the leather seat, my heart was pounding. Not with fear, but with something else. Fury. And perhaps a challenge. My phone buzzed. It was Mzee Jomo. How did it go? The lawyer asked. She refused, I said, watching through the window as she comforted her waking child. Then you have a problem, Jabali, Jomo said. Because the terms are specific. It must be Nia. If you cannot convince her by tomorrow night, the assets will be frozen Saturday morning. You will be destitute. I ended the call and threw the phone onto the seat. I looked back at the woman in the dust. She had rejected my money. She had insulted my pride. But I needed her. I needed her to save my empire. And if money wouldn't work, I would have to use the one weapon I had never needed before: deception. Driver, I said, my eyes narrowing as I watched her lift a heavy bale of fabric. Don't go back to the office. Take me to the family archives. I need to find out exactly why my grandmother chose her. But as the car pulled away, I saw something that made my blood freeze. A black SUV with tinted windows was parked down the street, watching Nia's stall. I recognized the license plate. It belonged to my greatest rival. The man who had vowed to burn my company to the ground. He knew. And if he got to her first, it wasn't just my fortune at risk. It was her life. The sight of that black SUV, a customized Land Rover Defender with reinforced plated armor, sent a chill through me that the air conditioning in my Mercedes couldn't match. I knew that car. I knew the viper who owned it, Kamau. Kamau was a bottom feeder who had clawed his way up from the gutters of the city's underbelly to become my main competitor in the logistics game. Where I used strategy and corporate takeovers, Kamau used intimidation and sabotage. He hated me with a primal jealousy. If I was the prince of the city, he was the warlord waiting at the gates. And he was watching Nia. Change of plan? I snapped at my driver, my voice tight. Don't take me to the archives yet. Follow that Defender. Stay 3 cars back. Do not let him see you. My driver nodded, his eyes wide in the rearview mirror, and merged into the chaotic traffic, tailing the massive vehicle. My mind raced. How did Kamau know? The terms of my grandmother's trust were sealed tighter than a Swiss bank vault. Only Mzee Jomo and I knew the contents. Jomo was incorruptible. That meant there was a leak somewhere else. But why Nia? What could Kamau possibly gain by watching a struggling market vendor? Unless he knew that she was the key to unlocking my entire fortune. If Kamau could get to her first, if he could intimidate her, bribe her, or worse, hurt her, he could ensure I missed the Friday deadline. He could watch my empire crumble and pick up the pieces for pennies on the dollar. A strange, unfamiliar sensation twisted in my gut. It wasn't just fear for my assets. When I pictured Kamau's thugs approaching that woman, that fierce, proud woman who had torn up 1,000,000 shillings in my face, I felt a surge of protective rage. She was annoying, yes. She was stubborn. But she was currently mine to deal with, according to the will. Nobody else touched what was mine. He's turning, sir. Heading towards industrial area, the driver reported. Kamau wasn't making a move on her yet. He was just marking his territory. He was letting me know he knew the game had begun. Let him go, I said, making a calculated decision. Following him would only confirm his suspicions. I needed information before I started a war. Take me to the Karen house. The archives. As the limousine pulled away from the dusty chaos of the Eastlands and sped towards the lush, leafy suburbs of Karen, the silence inside the car felt heavy. I closed my eyes and all I could see was Nia's face, the sweat, the exhaustion, and that blazing, defiant pride. Dignity cannot be bought. Her words echoed in my head, mocking my entire belief system. I had just offered her a second chance at life, a way out of poverty, and she threw it away because of pride? It made no sense. I needed to understand who I was dealing with. The archives of the Mwangi estate were located in a climate-controlled basement beneath the main mansion. The air down here smelled of old paper, beeswax, and secrets. I unlocked the heavy oak door and flipped on the lights. Shelves packed with leather-bound journals, photo albums, and business ledgers stretched out before me. I went straight to the section marked with my grandmother's personal seal, a lioness curled around a rose. I spent 2 hours digging. I read through diaries from 30 years ago, sifting through Mama Cece's elegant script. I found entries about business deals that shaped the nation, dinners with presidents, and ruthless decisions that had doubled our family wealth. And then, in a velvet-lined box tucked behind a stack of deeds, I found a bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. The top letter was addressed to me. My dearest Jabali, if you are reading this, you are angry. You are pacing the floor, cursing my name, wondering why I have tied your hands from beyond the grave. You think I am punishing you. I'm not. I'm trying to save you. You have become a master of industry, my son. You can look at a balance sheet and see the future. But when you look at people, you see only assets and liabilities. Your heart has become a boardroom, cold, empty, and efficient. You are abandoning your humanity for power. You ask Jomo why I chose Nia Odhiambo. You think she is a random pauper I picked to humble you. You are wrong. I turned the page, my hands actually trembling slightly. Nia's mother, Akoko, was my dearest friend when we were young girls in the village before I met your grandfather, before the money. We dreamed together. Akoko was brilliant, kinder than I ever was. But life is cruel. Akoko was betrayed by a wealthy man, a man from a family much like ours now. He promised her the world, got her pregnant with Nia, and then abandoned her when his family threatened to disown him. He left her to rot in poverty while he married a socialite to secure a merger. Akoko died of a treatable illness because she couldn't afford a good doctor. Nia was left alone at 16, raising her younger siblings and now raising her own son after her own husband died in a factory accident. A factory owned by one of your subsidiaries, Jabali. A factory where safety corners were cut to maximize profit. I stopped reading. The air in the basement suddenly felt thin. I couldn't breathe. My company. My obsession with efficiency. It had indirectly created the widow I was now trying to force into marriage. Nia is struggling not because she is weak but because the world of the wealthy, our world, has crushed her repeatedly. Yet she still smiles. She still fights. She has the warmth and fire you have lost. You owe a debt, Jabali. Not just financial but spiritual. Marry her. Protect her. Learn from her. If you cannot see her worth within a year, then you truly are lost, and you deserve to lose the fortune that cost others so much. With all my love and hope, Mama Sisi. I lowered the letter. I felt sick. The arrogance I had walked into the market with hours ago now felt like ashes in my mouth. I hadn't just insulted a poor woman, I had insulted the victim of my own family's greed. I wasn't a savior offering her a lifeline. I was the villain of her story. My phone buzzed again. A text from my head of security. It was a photo taken with a long-range lens. It showed two large men standing near Nia's stall in the darkening market. They weren't buying fabric. They were waiting. Kamau's men. Fear, sharp and cold, pierced through my chest. They weren't waiting for Friday. They were making their move tonight. I looked at the letter one last time. Protect her. It was no longer about the inheritance. It was about a debt I didn't know I owed. I ditched the suit jacket. I tore off my silk tie and threw it on the back seat of the car. I unbuttoned the top 2 buttons of my shirt and rolled up the sleeves. I couldn't go back there looking like the corporate raider who had tried to buy her. I needed to look like something else. A man desperate to help. Drive fast, I told the driver. If we hit traffic, drive on the pavement. Just get me back to that market. The sun had set by the time we reached the Eastlands again. The market was transforming. The cheerful chaos of the day was replaced by an edgy, shadowy atmosphere. Kerosene lamps flickered on the remaining stalls. The smell of roasting meat was heavier, mixing with the pungent scent of local brews. Nia was one of the few vendors still there. She was struggling to fold a large, heavy tarp over her remaining stock. Her son was crying, a tired, hungry whale strapped to her back. She looked exhausted, her movements slow and painful. I told the driver to hang back. I needed to do this alone. I walked toward her, keeping to the shadows as much as I could, feeling like a mysterious stranger stalking prey, though my intent was the opposite. As I got closer, I saw them. The 2 men from the photo. They were leaning against a closed kiosk about 20 feet from her, smoking cigarettes, their eyes fixed on her struggling form. They were big, scarred, and radiating menace. Nia sensed me before she saw me. She whipped around, dropping a corner of the heavy tarp. When she recognized me, her exhaustion hardened instantly into hostility. "You," she hissed. "Did you come back to see if I changed my mind about selling my soul? The price is still the same, not for sale." "Nia, listen to me," I said, keeping my voice low, urgent. I didn't step too close. I held my hands out, palms up, showing I held no checkbook this time. "I'm not here to fight. You are in danger." She scoffed, hoisting the crying baby higher on her back. "The only danger I see is a rich man who won't take no for an answer. Go home to your palace, Mr. Mwangi. Leave us alone." "Look over your shoulder," I said, nodding toward the 2 men. "Do you know those men?" She hesitated, then glanced back quickly. I saw her body stiffen. "They've been watching you for the last hour?" I pressed, moving a step closer. "They work for a man named Kamau. He is my enemy, and because I approached you today, you have become a target." Her eyes widened in the dim lamplight. What? I don't know any Kamau." "It doesn't matter. He thinks you are important to me. That makes you leverage." I dropped the corporate persona completely. My voice was raw. "Look at me, Nia. You are a single mom alone in the dark. Those men are not here to buy fabric. If I leave right now, what do you think happens when the last customer goes home?" The baby let out a sharp cry. Nia shushed him frantically, her hand trembling on his small back. I could see the war in her eyes, her hatred of me battling her primal instinct to protect her child. The 2 men tossed their cigarettes to the ground and pushed off the wall. They started walking slowly towards us. Nia saw them move. The blood drained from her face beneath her dark skin. "Oh God," she whispered. "I can get you out of here," I said, extending my hand. "Not with money but with a physical offer of safety. My car is just around the corner. It's armored. You'll be safe." "Why would you help me?" she asked, her voice shaking, staring at my outstretched hand like it was a venomous snake. "You hate people like me." The words from Mama Sisi's letter burned in my mind. "You owe a debt. Let's just say I'm trying to balance a ledger," I said gruffly. Now, are you going to let your pride get you both hurt, or are you going to come with me? The thugs were 10 feet away. One of them grinned, revealing broken teeth. Evening, sister, he called out, his voice like grinding stones. Need help packing up? That decided it. Nia didn't say yes. She just moved. She grabbed my hand. Her skin was rough, calloused from hard work, but her grip was surprisingly strong. A jolt of something electric, adrenaline, fear, something else, shot up my arm at the contact. It was the first time I had touched a woman in years that wasn't a calculated social greeting or a meaningless transaction. This felt real. Go, I said. We ran. It wasn't a graceful exit. We scrambled over boxes, dodging late-night pedestrians. I kept myself between her and the men, half dragging her toward the waiting limousine. Hey! The thugs shouted, breaking into a run behind us. My driver saw us coming and threw open the back door. I pushed Nia and the baby inside first, then dove in after them. Go. Go. I yelled. Tires squealed on the tarmac as the heavy car lurched forward, leaving the two cursing men in a cloud of exhaust fumes. Inside the car, the silence was instantaneous and overwhelming. The tinted windows blocked out the market noise. The air conditioning hummed softly. Nia sat on the far side of the leather bench seat, pressing herself against the door. She was breathing hard, her chest heaving. She unstrapped the baby, who was now crying hysterically, and pulled him to her chest, rocking him violently. She looked around the interior of the car, at the polished wood trim, the soft ambient lighting, the sheer impossible luxury of it. Her eyes were wide with a mixture of terror and awe. She looked at me. I was leaning back against the seat, trying to catch my own breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. Where are you taking us? She demanded, her voice brittle. Somewhere safe, I said. Who were those men? What have you dragged me into? She was starting to panic now that the immediate threat was gone. Let me out. I want to go home. You can't go home, I said flatly. They know where you work. They probably know where you live. If I drop you off in your neighborhood, they will be waiting for you by morning. So what? I am your prisoner now? She spat, her eyes filling with angry tears. Is this how billionaires get what they want? You hire thugs to scare me so you can play the hero? The accusation stung because it was something the old Jabali might have considered. I didn't hire them, I said, meeting her gaze fiercely. But I am the reason they are after you. Which is why I am going to fix it. The car slowed down. We were leaving the city lights behind, entering the dark, tree-lined roads of Karen. Where are we? She whispered, looking out the window at the towering hedges and high stone walls. The car turned off the main road and approached a massive wrought iron gate emblazoned with the letter M. The gate swung open slowly, revealing a winding driveway lit by golden lanterns, leading up to a sprawling, colonial-era mansion that looked more like a government building than a home. Nia gasped. The sheer scale of the wealth was terrifying to someone who lived in a two-room shack. The car stopped under the portico. The driver opened my door. I stepped out and offered my hand to her again. She looked at the house, then at me, her eyes full of suspicion and fear. She held her son tighter, as if I might try to snatch him away. You have a choice, Nia, I said softly, the gravity of the situation hitting me. Out there, Kamau is waiting. And here you are safe. But if you step out of this car, there is no going back. You are part of my world now. She didn't take my hand this time. She climbed out on her own, clutching her child, stepping onto the marble driveway in her worn sandals. She looked small against the backdrop of the towering mansion, but her spine was steel. I am not part of your world, Jabali Mwangi, she said, her voice shaking but resolute. I am just trying to survive it. I nodded slowly. Welcome home, Nia. She looked up at the massive front doors and I saw the realization dawn on her. She had escaped the wolves at the market, only to walk straight into the lion's den. And she had no idea that the man standing next to her needed her far more than she needed him. The silence of my mansion was usually my favorite thing. It was the sound of success, the sound of being so high up that the noise of the world couldn't reach you. But as the heavy mahogany doors clicked shut behind us, locking Nia and her son inside with me, the silence felt different. It felt heavy. Charged. Nia stood in the center of the grand foyer, her sandals sinking into the Persian rug that had cost more than the land her market stall sat on. She looked around, her eyes wide, taking in the crystal chandelier that cascaded like a frozen waterfall from the double-height ceiling, the marble staircase that swept upward in a graceful curve, and the portraits of my ancestors lining the walls. She didn't look impressed. She looked trapped. It's cold, she whispered, pulling the blanket tighter around the sleeping boy in her arms. It's climate-controlled, I corrected automatically, placing my car keys on the antique side table. 72 degrees. Perfect for preserving the art. She turned to look at me, her gaze piercing. I wasn't talking about the temperature, Jabali. The comment struck a nerve, but I ignored it. I was in problem-solving mode. I had the asset, Nia, secure. Now I needed to close the deal. But first I had to manage the logistics. You're safe here, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the vast space. My security team patrols the perimeter 24/7. Kamau's thugs can't get within a mile of this place without me knowing. And what happens now? She asked, her voice weary. The adrenaline of the escape was fading, leaving her looking small and exhausted. Do I just live here? With you. We need to talk, I said, loosening my collar. But first you need to eat. And the boy? Baraka, she said softly, looking down at the sleeping child. His name is Baraka. Baraka, I repeated, meant blessing. A strange name for a child born into such struggle. Come. The kitchen is this way. I led her through the house, past the formal dining room with its 20-seat table that had never hosted a family dinner, only board meetings. We entered the kitchen, a gleaming expanse of stainless steel and black granite. It looked like the galley of a spaceship. Nia hesitated at the threshold. This is a kitchen? It looks like a laboratory. It's efficient, I said, opening the massive refrigerator. It was stocked with sparkling water, imported cheeses, and organic produce. I realized with a sudden pang of embarrassment that I had no idea what a 3-year-old ate. Did they eat cheese? I can have the chef prepare whatever you want, I offered. Steak? Lobster? We can have sushi delivered. Nia walked over to the counter and set Baraka down gently on one of the leather stools. She looked at the contents of the fridge and shook her head, a small, tired smile touching her lips. He's a toddler, Jabali. He won't eat lobster. Do you have milk? Bread? Maybe some eggs? I think so, I stammered. I, the man who managed logistics for 3 countries, couldn't locate a carton of milk in my own home. Nia sighed, stepping in front of me. She moved with a practical grace, shifting bottles of expensive wine aside until she found a jug of milk. She found a loaf of bread in the pantry. Within minutes, she had a pan on the stove, a stove that cost $10,000 and had likely never been used for scrambled eggs before. I leaned against the marble island, watching her. She seemed to shrink the massive room down to a manageable size. The smell of melting butter and cooking eggs filled the air, replacing the sterile scent of lemon cleaner. It smelled like a home. It was terrifying. Why are you doing this? She asked without turning around, flipping the eggs. And don't tell me it's because you're a good person. We established today that you aren't. I winced. Her honesty was brutal. My grandmother left a will, I said, deciding that the truth, or part of it, was the only way forward. She locked my inheritance in a trust. The empire, the fortune, everything I built. I lose control of it all on Friday unless I meet a condition. She turned off the stove and plated the eggs, cutting a slice of bread into soldiers for the boy, who was beginning to stir. She turned to face me, leaning back against the counter. Let me guess, she said dryly. The condition is that you marry a poor, struggling single mom to prove you have a heart? I stared at her. How did you? I watch movies, Jabali. I may be poor, but I'm not stupid. She crossed her arms. So, I am a checklist item. A prop to help you keep your money. It's not just about the money, I lied, though the memory of Mama Cece's letter burned in my pocket. It's about legacy. My grandmother, she had specific ideas about what I needed. And what do I get? She asked, her voice hard. Besides a cage in a golden tower? You get safety, I said, stepping forward. Kamau knows who you are now. If you go back to the Eastlands, he will use you to get to me. He will burn your stall. He will threaten your son. If you marry me, you become a Mwangi. You become untouchable. I saw the fear flicker in her eyes at the mention of her son. I pressed my advantage. I will set up a trust for Baraka, I promised. 5 million shillings instantly. He will go to the best international schools. He will never know hunger. He will never know fear. You can hate me, Nia. You can despise this house. But can you look at that boy and deny him a future? She looked down at Baraka, who was now awake, rubbing his eyes with chubby fists. He looked at me, then at the strange room, and then reached for his mother. Nia picked him up, holding him tight. I saw the conflict warring in her face. The pride of the self-made woman against the desperate love of a mother. Is it real? She asked quietly. The marriage. Is it legal? Yes. It has to be, I said. For 1 year. After that, we can divorce quietly. You keep the money. You keep the title. You walk away free." She was silent for a long time. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. "1 year," she whispered. "I sell 1 year of my life to secure his entire future." "It's a business deal," I said, retreating to the language I knew best. "A partnership." She looked at me then, and her eyes were not the eyes of a partner. They were the eyes of a judge. "No touching," she said firmly. "No sleeping in the same bed. I am your wife on paper and in public. In private, we are strangers." I felt a strange twinge of disappointment, which I immediately crushed. "Agreed. I have plenty of guest suites. And I want to work," she added. "I won't sit in this museum all day getting manicures. I want to open a proper boutique. My own designs. My own business." "Done," I said instantly. "I'll have the lawyers draw up the papers tonight." "One more thing," she said, her voice softening as she stroked Baraka's hair. "You don't treat us like charity cases. You treat us with respect. If you ever raise your voice at my son, the deal is off. I don't care about the money. I will take him and leave, Kamau or no Kamau." I looked at the fierce set of her jaw. I remembered the letter. "She has the warmth and fire you have lost." "I give you my word," I said solemnly. She nodded slowly. "Then Jabali Mwangi? I guess we are getting married." The next 24 hours were a blur of high-stakes management. I treated the wedding like a hostile takeover, swift, precise, and airtight. I flew a judge in from the coast. I had Mzee Jomo draft a prenuptial agreement that protected both of us. I had a stylist team come to the mansion to dress Nia, though she refused their heavy makeup and flashy jewelry, opting for a simple, elegant white dress that made her look like a queen from an ancient lineage. We stood in the mansion's private chapel, a beautiful stone room with stained glass windows that I hadn't entered since my grandmother's funeral. It was just us, Jomo, the judge, and Baraka playing with a toy car on the pew. "Do you, Jabali, take Nia?" As I said the words, looking into her dark, skeptical eyes, I felt a weight settle on my shoulders. It wasn't the burden I expected. It felt like an anchor. For years I had been floating, untethered, chasing higher numbers. Now I was tied to something. To someone. "I do," I said. "I do," she repeated, her voice steady. When the judge pronounced us man and wife, there was an awkward pause. "You may kiss the bride," the judge said, smiling, unaware of the tension. Nia stiffened. I hesitated. We had agreed, no touching. But Jomo was watching. The judge was watching. We had to sell the lie. "Just once," I murmured, leaning in close so only she could hear. "For the audience." She didn't pull away, but she didn't lean in either. She stood her ground, her face tilted up towards mine. I placed my hands tentatively on her waist. She felt warm. Solid. I lowered my head and pressed my lips to hers. It was meant to be a stage kiss. A dry, quick peck to seal the contract. It wasn't. Her lips were soft, and for a split second I forgot the contract. I forgot Jomo. I forgot the boardroom. There was a spark, a jolt of static electricity that zapped through me, waking up parts of my soul I thought had atrophied years ago. It tasted like sunlight and rain. I pulled back, breathless. Nia's eyes were wide. She touched her lips with her fingertips, looking at me with a mixture of confusion and shock. We stared at each other for a beat too long. "Well then," Jomo boomed, breaking the spell. "Congratulations. The trust is secured. The assets are yours, Jabali." I blinked, snapping back to reality. "Right. Yes. Good." I turned away from her, my heart hammering a rhythm that had nothing to do with business. "Get a grip, Jabali," I told myself. "It's just a deal." But as we walked out of the chapel, her hand hesitantly tucked into the crook of my elbow, I knew I was in trouble. That evening the house was quiet again, but the atmosphere had shifted. Nia and Baraka were settled in the east wing. I was in my study in the west wing, staring at a spreadsheet but seeing nothing. I needed a drink. I walked to the kitchen, intending to get a glass of water. The lights were dimmed. I thought everyone was asleep. But Nia was there. She was sitting at the island, wearing a silk robe I had provided, a mug of tea in her hands. She looked small in the vast darkness of the house. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, startling her. She jumped, clutching her robe tighter. "The bed is too soft," she admitted. "And it's too quiet. In the Eastlands there is always noise. Music, dogs, neighbors fighting. Here, the silence is loud." I poured myself a water and leaned against the counter opposite her. "You get used to it. Eventually the silence feels like power." "Or loneliness," she countered softly. I paused, the glass halfway to my lips. She saw too much. "Why didn't you tell me about your grandmother?" she asked. I found a photo of her in the library. She had kind eyes. "She was a force of nature," I said, my voice tight. "She raised me after my parents died. She taught me everything about business. But in the end, she thought I had lost my way." "Did you?" Nia asked. I looked at her. The moonlight was streaming in through the window, bathing her in silver. She looked beautiful. Not magazine beautiful, but real beautiful. "I built an empire," I defended myself. "I employ thousands of people." "But do you have anyone to eat eggs with?" she asked. The question hung in the air. "I have you now," I joked, trying to deflect. She didn't smile. "For a year. And only on paper." She finished her tea and stood up. "Good night, Jabali. Thank you for the safety. I will try to be a good investment." She walked past me, leaving the scent of vanilla and soap in her wake. I watched her go, feeling a strange ache in my chest. I went back to my study, but I couldn't focus. I pulled Mama Cece's letter out of my desk drawer and read the line again. Marry her. Protect her. Learn from her. I was doing the first two. But the third part? I was terrified that if I learned from her, if I let her warmth into my cold world, I would shatter. My phone rang, shattering the mood. It was my head of security. "Sir," he said, his voice urgent. "We have a problem." "What is it?" I snapped, instantly the CEO again. "It's Kamau. He's not backing down. He just bought the debt on your primary shipping warehouse. He's threatening to foreclose and seize the assets unless you meet him." "When?" "Tonight. At the port." I cursed. Kamau was escalating. He knew the marriage had gone through, so he was attacking the business directly. "I'm on my way," I said. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. I paused at the bottom of the stairs, looking up toward the east wing where Nia and Baraka were sleeping. I had promised her safety. I had promised her peace. But as I walked out into the cool Nairobi night, I knew that peace was a lie. The war was just beginning, and now I had a weakness. A vulnerability that Kamau could exploit. I had a family. And God help anyone who tried to touch them. The smell of the ocean was usually calming, but tonight at the Kilindini Dry Port Depot, the air smelled of diesel, rust, and malice. I parked my car under the harsh orange glow of a floodlight, the shipping containers stacking up around me like the walls of a prison. Kamau was waiting. He leaned against the hood of his Defender, flanked by 3 men, the same thugs who had terrorized Nia at the market. He wore a white linen suit that looked out of place amidst the grime, a deliberate show of arrogance. "Jabali," he called out, his voice oily. "You look tired. Married life exhausting you already?" I stepped out of the car, buttoning my jacket. "I didn't bring security. This was personal." "Cut the pleasantries, Kamau. You bought the debt on warehouse for what? It's a low-yield asset. It's beneath you." Kamau laughed, lighting a cigarette. "Nothing is beneath me, Rafiki. You know that. I bought it because I know it's the hub for your medical supply chain. I close that warehouse and your contracts with the Ministry of Health collapse. Your stock price tumbles. And you panic. How much do you want?" I asked, reaching for my inside pocket. "Name your price. I'll buy the debt back tonight." Amen. Kamau shook his head, blowing smoke into the humid night air. "I don't want your money, Jabali. I have enough money. I want to see you bleed. I want to see the great Jabali Mwangi, the man who thinks he is a god, brought down to the dirt with the rest of us." He took a step closer, his eyes glinting. "And I hear you have a new weakness. A wife. A market woman?" He sneered the words. "Nia, isn't it? Pretty thing. Feisty. It would be a shame if she realized that her new husband is about to lose everything." I moved before I thought. I grabbed Kamau by the lapels of his expensive suit and slammed him back against his car. His men surged forward, hands reaching for weapons, but Kamau held up a hand to stop them, grinning like a jackal. "Don't ever speak her name," I snarled, my face inches from his. "If you come near her, if you even look at her or her son, I will burn your world down. I won't just bankrupt you, Kamau. I will erase you." Kamau didn't flinch. He just smirked. "Touched a nerve? Good. That means it's real. Or maybe you're just afraid she'll find out the truth. That she's just a pawn in your game to keep your money." He pushed my hands away and straightened his jacket. "You have 48 hours to vacate the warehouse, Jabali, or I foreclose. And when the news hits the papers that Mwangi Holdings is defaulting, well, let's see if your little market wife sticks around when the credit cards stop working." He got into his car, his men piling in after him. As they drove off, leaving me standing in the dust, I realized my hands were shaking. Not from fear of losing the warehouse. I could fix that. I could move the inventory. I was shaking because he was right. I was terrified. Not of losing the money, but of losing the trust restored I was trying to build with Nia. I drove back to Karen in a daze. It was past 2 a.m. when I pulled into the driveway. The mansion was dark, a silent fortress against the night. I entered quietly, expecting everyone to be asleep. But as I walked past the drawing room, I saw a soft light glowing. Nia was there. She was curled up on the oversized velvet sofa, a sketchbook resting on her knees, her head lolling to the side. She had fallen asleep working. I walked over softly. On the coffee table were dozens of sketches, vibrant, beautiful designs blending modern cuts with traditional African prints. They were brilliant. She wasn't just a seamstress, she was an artist. I looked down at her. In sleep, the defiance was gone from her face. She looked young and vulnerable. Her hand was resting near her face, and I noticed the simple gold band I had placed on her finger earlier that day. My wife. The thought didn't feel like a contract anymore. It felt like a promise I was desperate to keep. She stirred, her lashes fluttering. She opened her eyes, disoriented, and then saw me. She sat up quickly, pulling her robe tight. Jabali? You're back late. She looked at my clothes, dusty from the port, and her eyes narrowed. Where were you? You smell like diesel and trouble. Business, I said, my voice rough. I sat down on the ottoman opposite her, too tired to keep up the facade. Just business. She looked at me for a long moment, then closed her sketchbook. You look like you've been fighting a war. I have, I admitted. I rubbed my face with my hands. Nia, I wanted to tell her everything. About Kamau, about the threat, about how terrified I was. But I couldn't. She had agreed to this marriage for safety. If she knew the danger was escalating, she would take Baraka and run. And out there, without my security, they were sitting ducks. I'm just tired, I lied. The transition, it's a lot. She didn't believe me. I could see it. But she didn't press. Instead, she stood up and walked to a side table where a thermos sat. I made tea, she said. Chai with cardamom and ginger. It helps with stress. My mother used to make it. She poured a cup and handed it to me. The ceramic was warm in my hands. I took a sip. It was sweet, spicy, and scorching hot. It tasted like comfort. Thank you, I said softly. She sat back down, tucking her legs under her. Baraka asked for you tonight. He wanted the big man to read him a story. I choked on my tea slightly. Me? Why? She shrugged, a small smile playing on her lips. He likes you. He thinks you're a giant. And you were kind to him in the car. Children know who is safe. Safe. The word twisted a knife in my gut. I'm not a good man, Nia, I said, looking into the dark liquid in my cup. You were right in the market. I've spent my life chasing money. I've crushed people like Kamau. People worse than Kamau. But you're trying, she said. Her voice was gentle, lacking the sharp edge she usually carried. You saved us from those men. You gave us this home. Maybe you were cold, Jabali. But ice melts. She reached out and, for the first time, initiated contact. She placed her hand over mine on the cup. We are in this together now, she whispered. Whatever is happening out there, you don't have to carry it alone. I looked at her hand, dark against my skin. I looked into her eyes and saw healing. I saw a new beginning. Nia, I breathed. The air between us shifted. It wasn't the staged tension of the wedding. It was heavy, magnetic. I leaned forward, drawn to her like a moth to a flame. I wanted to kiss her again, not for an audience but for me, to see if that spark was real. She didn't pull away. Her breath hitched. Crash. The sound of shattering glass from the east wing tore through the silence like a gunshot. Nia screamed. Baraka. We both bolted. I was faster. I sprinted through the hallway, my heart hammering in my throat. The east wing. The nursery. I burst into the room. The window was shattered. A brick lay on the floor amidst the broken glass. The cold night wind was blowing the curtains wildly. Baraka was sitting up in his bed, wailing in terror, but he was unharmed. I scanned the room. No one was there. I rushed to the window and looked out. I saw a shadow sprinting across the lawn toward the back wall, disappearing into the darkness. Baraka. Nia rushed past me, scooping her son into her arms. She fell to her knees, rocking him, checking him for cuts, her tears flowing freely. Oh God, oh God. I walked over to the brick on the floor. There was a piece of paper tied to it with a rubber band. I picked it up and unfolded it. It was a copy of our prenuptial agreement. The confidential document Mzee Jomo had drafted. The one that explicitly stated the marriage was a business arrangement for 1 year in exchange for assets. Scrawled across the front in red marker were the words, "The world knows. 9 a.m. tomorrow." My blood ran cold. Kamau hadn't just attacked the house. He had leaked the contract. "What is it?" Nia asked, looking up at me, clutching her sobbing child. "Jabali, what is that?" I crushed the paper in my fist, trying to hide it. "Nothing. It's just a threat. A prank." "Don't lie to me," she screamed, her voice cracking with hysteria. "Someone threw a brick through my son's window. What is happening?" She stood up, Baraka clinging to her neck. She marched over and pried my fingers open. She took the crumpled paper. She read it. I watched the color drain from her face. I watched the trust restored shatter into a million pieces, sharper than the glass on the floor. "You said this was confidential," she whispered, looking at me with horror. "You said nobody would know." "Nia, It says the world knows," she said, her voice trembling. "If the press gets this, if everyone knows I sold myself." "I will fix it," I said, stepping toward her. "I will stop it." "Stop it." She laughed, a high, frantic sound. "You can't stop it. You brought this to our door. You promised safety, Jabali. Is this safety? My son almost died." "I didn't know he would go this far," I pleaded. "You knew he was dangerous," she yelled, backing away from me. "You knew and you used us anyway. We are just bait to you. Human shields for your money." "No," I shouted. "That's not true. Not anymore." "Stay away from us," she hissed. "Don't come near me. Don't come near my son." She turned and ran into the bathroom, locking the door behind her. I heard the lock click, followed by the sound of her sobbing. I stood alone in the nursery, the cold wind blowing through the broken window, the crumpled paper at my feet. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from a gossip blog. Then another. Then a news alert. Billionaire fraud? Jabali Mwangi's fake marriage exposed. Document leak, the price of a wife. It was starting. I walked to the window and looked out into the dark. Kamau had played his ace. He had turned the city against me. He had humiliated Nia. And he had made a fatal mistake. He thought this would break me. He thought I would retreat to the boardroom to save the stock price. But as I listened to Nia crying behind that locked door, something inside the cold-hearted billionaire snapped and died. And something else was born. I wasn't going to fight a legal battle. I wasn't going to hold a press conference. I was going to war. I pulled out my phone and dialed the one number I never used. The number for the old crew. The men who worked in the shadows, the ones my grandmother had used before we became legitimate. "It's Jabali," I said into the darkness. "Prepare the car. And bring the boys. We are finishing this tonight." The old crew didn't arrive in SUVs with guns. They arrived in a nondescript van loaded with servers and satellite uplinks. These weren't the thugs my grandmother used to employ, they were the digital ghosts I had used to build my empire in the early days. Information was the new ammunition. "We have him, boss," a young man named Kalo said, his face illuminated by the blue glow of 3 monitors set up on my mahogany dining table. "Kamau didn't just leak the prenup. He hacked your law firm's server. That's a felony. But we found something better." "Show me," I commanded, leaning over his shoulder. "Kamau's logistics company, it's a shell," Kalo explained, typing furiously. "He's been laundering money for the cartels through the port. We found the digital trail. It's sloppy. He got arrogant." I looked at the screen. It was all there. Wire transfers, offshore accounts, manifests for spare parts that were actually contraband. "I can send this to the DCI and the Anti-Corruption Commission right now," Kalo said, his finger hovering over the enter key. "By sunrise, his accounts will be frozen. By noon, he'll be in handcuffs." "Do it," I said. "And leak it to the press. All of it. Let them have a real scandal." Kalo pressed the key. Justice in the modern world was silent, but its impact was deafening. But I wasn't done. Kamau was a symptom. The real disease was the rot in my own house, the shattered trust between Nia and me. I walked up the stairs to the east wing. The hallway was quiet. The broken window in the nursery had been boarded up by my staff. The door to the bedroom was still locked. "Nia," I called out softly, resting my forehead against the wood. "Open the door." "Go away," her voice came muffled and thick with tears. "I'm packing. As soon as the sun comes up, we are leaving." "You can't leave," I said. "The press is at the gate. There are 50 cameras out there. If you walk out now, they will swarm you. They will tear you and Baraka apart." Silence. She knew I was right. I'm going out there to fix this, I said, my voice steady. I'm going to end the lie. But I need you to trust me one last time. Not as a business partner, but as family. We are not family, she whispered. We are a contract. Watch the news in 10 minutes, I said. I turned and walked away. I went to my room, stripped off the dusty suit from the warehouse and put on a fresh one. Navy blue. Sure. Presidential. I looked in the mirror. The man staring back wasn't the cold-hearted billionaire anymore. He was a man who had almost lost the only thing that mattered. I walked out of the front door and down the long driveway. The security guards tried to stop me. Sir, don't go out there, the head of security warned. They are like vultures. Open the gates, I ordered. The massive iron gates swung open. The flashbulbs were blinding. A wall of noise hit me, shouted questions, accusations, the chaos of the Nairobi press pack. Mr. Mwangi, is the marriage a sham? Did you buy a wife to keep your fortune? Is it true you are forcing a single mom to live with you? I stood on the raised step of the gatehouse. I raised a hand. The authority I had cultivated for decades worked. The noise died down to a murmur. I have a statement, I said, my voice projecting clearly without a microphone. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out the original copy of the prenuptial agreement, the one Kamau hadn't been able to steal. You have all seen the leaked draft, I said, holding it up. You think you know the story. You think this is a scandal about money. I looked directly into the camera lens of the biggest news station, knowing Nia was watching inside the house. This document says that Nia Odhiambo is a temporary arrangement. It says our marriage is a business deal to secure my inheritance. I paused. The silence was absolute. This document, I continued, my voice rising, is an insult. It is an insult to the woman who saved my life. It is an insult to the family we are building. I took the thick sheaf of papers in both hands, and with a violent rip, I tore the contract in half, then in quarters. I threw the confetti of paper into the air, letting the wind carry it away. Gasps rippled through the crowd. There is no contract, I declared. There is no arrangement. Nia Mwangi is my wife. Not for a year. Not for the bank. But for life. And anyone who disrespects her, disrespects me. Anyone who threatens her son, threatens a Mwangi. And you all know, Mwangis do not forgive threats. But the inheritance, a reporter shouted. Without the prenup, if you divorce, you lose half. I don't care, I said, and for the first time in my life I meant it. Let the lawyers figure it out. Let the trust dissolve. I can build another fortune. I cannot build another Nia. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A news alert. Breaking. Business mogul Kamau arrested in dawn raid. Massive corruption ring exposed. I smiled grimly. And if you are looking for a real story, I told the stunned reporters, check your updates. The man who leaked that document is currently being booked at Central Police Station. I suggest you go ask him about his sudden change in fortune. The reporters checked their phones. Chaos erupted. They scrambled toward their vans, chasing the fresh, bloodier scent of Kamau's downfall. I turned around and walked back toward the house. The driveway felt longer this time. My heart was pounding. I had just risked everything. I had destroyed the legal safety net my grandmother's lawyer had insisted on. I entered the foyer. Nia was standing at the top of the stairs. She was holding Baraka. Her bags were packed and sitting by her feet. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. She had seen it. I walked up the stairs slowly, stopping a few steps below her. You tore it up, she whispered. That was your protection. I don't need protection from you, I said. I need you. You could lose the money, she said, her voice trembling. If I leave now, you lose the trust. And you have no contract to stop me from taking half of what you have left. I know, I said. But you won't take it. Because you are the woman who tore up a million-shilling check in the dirt. You are the woman who values dignity over gold. I took another step up. Clause 4A, I murmured. My grandmother wanted me to marry a woman of worth. I thought she meant I had to save you. But she knew you had to save me. Nia let out a shaky breath. She set Baraka down. The little boy, sensing the shift in the air, ran to me. Baba, he chirped, grabbing my leg. The word hit me harder than the brick through the window. Baba. Father. I picked him up. He felt heavy and warm and perfect. Nia walked down the remaining steps. She stopped in front of me. She reached out and touched my face, her hand trembling slightly. You are a fool, Jabali Mwangi, she said, tears spilling over her lashes. A reckless, arrogant fool. I agreed. But I'm your fool. She didn't hesitate this time. She stood on her tiptoes and pulled me down. The kiss wasn't like the one in the chapel. That had been a spark. This was a fire. It was a miracle of colliding worlds. It was the desperation of the last 48 hours, the fear, the anger, and the overwhelming relief all pouring into one moment. It was the kiss that sealed the destiny my grandmother had written for us. When we broke apart, Nia rested her forehead against mine. "I'm not leaving," she whispered. "Good," I said, my voice hoarse. "Because I don't think I can run this empire without you." 6 months later. The garden of the Karen mansion was transformed. The stiff, manicured hedges were gone, replaced by vibrant beds of roses, bougainvillea, and wild sunflowers. A swing set stood under the ancient jacaranda tree. Music, real, loud, joyful rumba, filled the air. It was Baraka's 4th birthday party. And it wasn't a stuffy affair. The entire market crew was there. Mama Oliek was grilling maize in one corner. The fabric sellers were dancing on the patio. And mixed in with them were the city's elite, senators, CEOs, and diplomats, who had learned very quickly that if they wanted to do business with Jabali Mwangi, they had to respect the vibe of the Mwangi household. I stood on the balcony watching the scene below. "You look smug," a voice rasped behind me. I turned to see Mzee Jomo. He was leaning on his cane holding a glass of juice. He looked older, but his eyes were twinkling. "I am happy, Jomo," I corrected. "There is a difference." "The trust transferred fully this morning," Jomo said, handing me a heavy envelope. "You fulfilled the conditions. And then some." "I didn't do it for the money," I said, taking the envelope without opening it. "I know," Jomo chuckled. "That was the test, you idiot. Mama Sisi knew you could fake a marriage. She wanted to see if you could be real enough to risk losing it. Tearing up that prenup? That was the moment you earned the inheritance." He tapped my chest with his cane. "She would be proud. You are finally the man she raised." I looked down at the garden. Nia was in the center of a group of women, laughing, her head thrown back. She was wearing a dress from her own line, a stunning emerald green creation that was currently sold out in boutiques across 3 continents. She radiated power and grace. She looked up, sensing my gaze. She waved, her smile blinding. I waved back. Love wins. It sounds like a cliché on a greeting card, but standing there watching my son chase a butterfly and my wife ruling her court, I knew it was the only truth that mattered. I had been a millionaire before I met her. But looking at the life we had built from the ashes of my arrogance and her struggle, I realized I had been destitute. Now finally I was rich. I pocketed the envelope, walked down the stairs, and joined the dance. The end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below.